Today we're going to be talking about Greek theater. This is the Theater of Dionysus at the Acropolis. This here over on this side is a depiction of what the theater would have looked like back then. You see multi-storied buildings. This is actually what the theater looks like today. This is taken from the Acropolis looking down on where the Theater of Dionysus would have been so that you can see this outline. This is the orchestra area here. You can see that's depicted right in here. This is a similar theater. This is the theater at Epidaurus. Again, this is modern day times. This is a reconstruction of a modern day version of the parts of the theater. They were actually doing a live production at night at this theater when I was there. And so again, you see this round area. This is the orchestra part where the chorus would stand. We'll get to that later. Here's a back view of that so that you can see how the theaters were built into the hillside. And you can see again the back of the area where the actors would come and go and how people would come up to the theater. So for the parts of the theater, the first part of the theater is called the skene or skene. It's a wooden structure on the opened end of the theatron that's behind the orchestra. It's this building, this entire building here. And it's used as a dressing room for the actors. That happens in the back. Or for storage of scenery and the echiclema. We'll find the echiclema later on in the lecture. It presented a backdrop for the play's action so that the actors were all in front of this when they were on stage. The facade is the front of the skene. It often resembled a palace or a temple. Many times it was painted over. This shows this flat area that's here. That's called the facade. There were also 3 doors in the skene, and those were used for the entrances and exits of the actors. You'll see here that in this depiction of a Greek theater, a more modern Greek theater, this is the largest door here in the middle, and then you also have 2 other doors on the sides that are used for entrances and exits of the actors. The proscenium is the level area that's in front of the skene. In later theaters, it's a raised platform that's a step or 2 higher than the orchestra. Most of the action with the actors takes place here, and there is no curtain. As you can see, there is no curtain that runs across the front. The actors and actresses would all go in and out of the doors, and the main event of the play would take place right there on the front in the proscenium. The parados is an entrance passage for the chorus. The chorus marched in through these entrance ways that are here on the side. And they went to the orchestra area and stayed there for the entire production. Sometimes these were an hour and a half, 2-hour plays, and the chorus played a role in each one of the plays, and they would stand there and stay there for the entirety of the production. Here is the orchestra area. Again, this is the theater at Epidaurus. It's this circular area at ground level that's between the seating for the audience, which would be where we're standing here when we take the picture, and it's in the skene area, which is up here. Now, again, this is a more modern version. You have 3 doors, and the actors would come down these ramps to the center of the area. But the proscenium would have been here. It's enclosed. The orchestra itself is enclosed on 3 sides. One here, one here, and one here, 3 sides by the theatron. So the dancing and the performing place of the chorus, that's where the chorus were when they were involved in the production. The thymele, that's this thing right here in the middle. The thymele is an altar to Dionysus that's located in the center of the orchestra. It could be used as a real altar for sacrifices to be made or as a stage prop. An example of it being used as a real altar would have been that during the ceremonies, they had opening ceremonies and closing ceremonies for these plays. And during the opening ceremonies, the people would be sitting in the theatron here on the side, and the priest would come out. The priest of Dionysus would come out. They would actually make a sacrifice on here, and then once it was finished, the plays would begin. But then it also served a secondary purpose, which was during the plays, it could also be used as a stage prop. Again, here you'll see the multi-layered, multi-leveled area of the building with the facade here on the front, the 3 doors, and in this case, this has got a level area that's the proscenium right in back of where the orchestra is. Then there were stone thrones. These are some modern examples of the theater at Epidaurus, the stone thrones that are still there today. In the first row of seats of the theatron, you would find these stone thrones, and they're special seats. They're reserved for VIPs, for example, judges of the plays, the priest of Dionysus, important citizens, etc. They would sit in these stone thrones as opposed to the more generalized seating that goes around the theatron. The theatron itself, then, is a horseshoe-shaped area where the audience sat. The stone seats were rising upward and backward in tiers, and it was often built into the side of a hill. It's very similar to today's stadium seating, where it's raised in tiers. You have all one level. There's not individual seats except for the stone thrones that are down on the front, and it's built into the side of a hill. They use the natural outcropping to help build this. As far as technical devices for the plays, one interesting one is called the echiclema. The echiclema is this platform that's on wheels. In this picture here, you can see this little part right here. It's a platform that's on wheels. It's rolled out of one of the doors, usually the center door of the skinny, to reveal a scene, usually a very violent scene that has taken place indoors. This scene right here is depicting the death of Agamemnon. So after he was killed by Aegisthus, coming out and his body is laying across this the echiclema. They did this because they did not use things like fake blood, and not often. They didn't usually, present something that was that gory. So it had taken place indoors, and then they reveal it to the audience in this way. The machine is this derrick or crane-like device that's mounted on the roof of the skini. You can see here, this is a good representation of, in the back, you have the wheel that's mounted to this that will raise and lower this basket. In this case, that's what they're using for here. It's mounted on the roof of the skini, and it's often used for the miraculous appearance of a god. So as you can see from this picture, the echiclema here again is here it's rolled out through the central doors. You've got some acting levels. You've got one that's here on the roof. A god would often be depicted up here. You have the general acting area down here, and then the orchestra part where the chorus would stand down here. So again, the machine lifts the figures above the stage level or lowers them from above to below the stage level. And the term deus ex machina, meaning the god from the machine. In ancient times, this meant that a god literally came down to resolve the action and make a believable ending. Sometimes the plot got to the point where there was no way that it was going to resolve itself without some, quote, like divine intervention. And so a god came down to resolve the action and to make a believable ending. In more modern times, it means that there is a solution that's imposed on the play from the outside, rather than one that develops from the action of the plot itself. So the term deus ex machina is still used today to indicate something that is imposed from the outside rather than to make sense of the plot, to make the plot wrap up, instead of revealing it through the plot itself. Okay, now for the people in the production, the actors were all male. They had to be singers as well as actors because many of the lines were sung or chanted. It was a very formal and stylized acting method. It was not realistic, not very natural at all. They wore masks and very elaborate costumes, often emphasizing the social position or character traits of the characters. So here's one example of a mask that would have been worn. You can see it's kind of a clay mask, so that would have been, quite heavy to wear as well. You'll notice that the opening for the eyes and for the mouth is rather large, so that the person will be able to see, and we'll see that how the mouth is also going to help the actor. Here are other examples of masks. This is one of Dionysus himself, the Comedy and Tragedy. Again, you see that one of the things that looks the same, you've got the same type of rather large mouth opening. Well, that's because sometimes, let me go back here. That's because many times these openings were used as like a megaphone of sorts, so that when the actors would speak through them, their voices would carry farther back into the theatron, so that the people at the very last row at the top would be able to hear them as clearly as the people who were sitting down in the very front rows. So the masks served dual purposes. They showed the character, again, whether it was a male or a female, whether it was someone of high stature or low, and it also served as a device so that the actors could reach, would be able to speak louder. The chorus serves several functions in a play. First, they explain the experiences and feelings of the characters to the audience in very everyday terms. They would reiterate, they would repeat the things that the main characters would say, so that the audience would understand it. They expressed conventional and acceptable attitudes of the time. So it's, for example, they would say, "Well, as we all know, this happened." Their choral odes, and an ode is just a song. Their choral odes created a psychological and an emotional background to the action. So it's very similar to a soundtrack in today's film that provides an emotional background, a psychological background to the action. You may think of Jaws and the music that's underneath Jaws, a drama, a comedy. The choral odes, though, are actual songs. Here's a depiction of the chorus. They introduced or questioned characters, so they did act sort of like the townspeople. They pointed out the significance of events as they occurred, and their songs conveyed this passage of time between the episodes. There are about 12 to 15 people in the chorus. They would sing and dance, so you can see that orchestra area was quite well used. The chorus would be the ones to say, "3 days have now passed since we last saw our king." So they would tell the audience in this way how much time has passed between the episodes. They would also introduce new characters. Oh, look, here comes the messenger. And that way the people knew what to look for next. Another person that's associated with the play, although this person is not acting in the play, is called the choragus. The choragus is a wealthy citizen who was appointed by the government to pay the cost of a dramatic production. He shared the prize with the poet that he sponsored. So if his poet won the prize, then he also got a portion of that money, and it was considered an honor or a matter of public service in order to do this. And finally, we have the audience. All free citizens went to productions. Attendance was both a religious and a civil obligation. You went because it was part of the festival of Dionysus. You went to pray. You went to worship. You also went to support the arts. And again, it was also a civil obligation. Everything was closed for the day. People packed up and went to the theater, in fact, for an extended period of time, several days in a row. And admission was typically free. Hope you enjoyed the lecture on the Greek theater.